talk about the 60s. It's, to me, the 60s really were 1965 to 75, if we think of a decade. The 60s opened with me in Germany, having lived there 6 years and one more year. And the whole 50s thing was America, it won World War II, it was going to make the world safe for democracy, blah, blah. It was also when civil rights became an issue. So in a way, the entree, my father dying in 61, and my year in mental hospitals, the 3 visits I had, and then Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech in 63. And these are my 60s, okay? The 60s, called the 60s, are peace and love, hippies, the summer of love, flower children. This is, when people say 60s, they're talking Jack Kerouac and Ken Kesey and the Magic Bus and Woodstock. That was 69. I think, so 60s were freedom, a real call for personal freedom to not be the thing your parents said you must be. The 60s were experimental drug use, which pretty much everyone I knew did it, myself included. And the 60s were where you stand. Where do you stand with civil rights? Where do you stand with the war in Vietnam? And when you say you're against it, is that a silent thing, I'm against the war? Or do you make noise? So the 60s was going to marches. It was being beaten up. It was speaking up in an uncomfortable position where your position is being called for and you decide to speak up. 60s were a breakaway from what I'd call boring men's clothes. And I did the jeans thing, patches on the jeans, and that's when I grew my hair. See, I grew up with buzz cuts in the military. So if you touched the top of my head, it felt like I was touching a bunch of pins that were hurting me. So it clearly showed me that nationalism means nothing to me. I don't believe in nations. I think John Lennon's song, Imagine, kind of summarized a lot. Imagine no country, imagine no religion, imagine no possessions, all felt right to me. The Beatles, their songs were songs I wanted to hear. And Ram Dass and what he was saying, and Tim Leary and what he was saying, Martin Luther King and what he was saying, many other lesser known luminaries that we were reading their books and we were discussing issues. We called them issues. I don't think I remember the word issues mentioned in the 50s. And you also saw it broke relationships and made relationships. There were people who I thought were friends, and then they were for the war in Vietnam, or they didn't care about civil rights, and our friendship, I'm going to say, ended. It didn't so much end in violence, it ended in, what do I have in common with this person? So the 60s drew lines, and if you were a part of the 60s, you stepped on which side of the line you were. And people stepped on the side of the line of for the war, for segregation. But it wasn't the message of the 60s. It just was, you suddenly found out that you had to draw a line somewhere with this particular thing. And I know the 60s, whatever 60s, other things, but I think it happened in the 60s. I entered medical school in the 60s. I I decided to be communal in the 60s. That was very clear. Decided to work on a hospital project, not yet defined as Gesundheit, but I was going to design a hospital addressing all the problems of care delivery. So in a way, the 60s midwifed me. Wah! 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 I did grow up some after that, but I'm still stuck in the 60s. I love that phrase, stuck in the 60s. Stuck in peace, stuck in justice. I liked marches. I didn't say much about it. I loved, I was at Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech. There was a march, and all the marches for peace against the war. And then right at the end of the 60s came the first Earth Day, where somebody suddenly, group of people said, let's talk the environment. So let me confess, I'm still in the 60s. Hey!